So today on the Kiss Army Things podcast, Paul Stanley, it's all about you! Hello everyone, welcome to the Kiss Army Things podcast. This is episode 82. My name is Xander.
My name is Daphne.
And no, I'm not going to be wearing this hat the entire time because I can't lean back in it. I was kind of hoping to keep it on for a minute, but
that's annoying,
I don't think it's going to work. Anyway, today is Paul Stanley's birthday, at least when we're recording for you guys. It'll be a day or two after. Anyway, so today is Paul Stanley's birthday, and this episode is going to be all about Paul Stanley. We are both wearing our Paul Stanley centric T-shirts.
I even wore a bright purple sweater to go with it.
Also,
we got our purple light and everything.
Yeah, it's cold, so the sweater
also. Yeah, it's also freezing.
It's very, very cold. So hopefully you guys are staying warm, you're bundled up, and thank you so much for joining us because we're going to be doing a complete episode today, just talking about Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley as a singer, a songwriter, a vocalist, just as, you know, the frontman of Kiss. Yeah, for real. So it's just going to be a Paul Stanley only episode. We've done episodes about Eric Singer, and then I think Jeb and I did one about Vinnie Vincent in particular. And so this one is going to be just about Paul Stanley. Maybe at some point we'll get to the other members.
I'm sure we will.
But today it's just going to be about Paul. And we've also had a few Kiss birthdays also recently. Okay. We had both Peter and Bruce in December.
Yep.
And now we're celebrating Paul's. I don't know when the next one is, though. I know Ace's is in April. But, yeah, I don't know. So maybe we'll get to, you know, everybody else at some point. But today's just going to be all about Paul Stanley. And we gave ourselves an assignment.
Yes, we did.
We wanted to kind of give ourselves a little homework to do. And that was listen to both the solo album from 78 and Live to Win.
The most fun homework I've ever been given.
I was going to say,
personally.
I mean, it's not really work if it's fun. But no, so that was our little thing. You know, it's okay. And not together either. No. We did it separately. You know, when she was on her way to work, I was on my way, you know, or whatever. Listen to both the 78 solo album and Live to Win. Just to kind of, you know, for fun, you know, compare and contrast and just, you know, celebrate Paul Stanley in his entire career as a solo artist and, of course, a member of Kiss. And so we're going to have these here. I don't know if you want to put them here quite
definitely.
Yet. We may need to reference their track listing at some point.
We'll
but
grab them again if we need them.
We'll put them there for now just to keep them on display. So, yeah, I guess these will act as our Kiss Spotlight this week.
Definitely. No question.
We'll just use these as our Kiss Spotlight. So, yeah, Daphne, you talk. What's up? What's up about Paul Stanley?
I loved this assignment. I listened to both albums a few times at first. And then, you know, I'd already kind of digested and, you know, had my thoughts about it. So I was kind of trying to move on to other music because I'd been listening to these albums for almost a week. But then I just found myself wanting to go back to them, honestly. So even today, I was jamming the 78 album. And then we actually, even though we mostly listened to them apart, today we were listening to a little bit of Live to Win in the car.
Yep.
I can't get enough. They're so good. He is so incredible.
Yeah, and so I just thought that we could talk about maybe the solo album first, and then get to Live to Win.
Absolutely.
But we always do in September, we do a review of the 4 solo albums, and so we already did that a few months ago. But even since then, you know, just listening to it, it still felt fresh, it still felt new. And even though it is, you know, always nice to listen to Kiss albums on or around their release, you know, it's just cool to just pull albums out any time of year. And I feel like the solo albums don't usually get that treatment. The solo albums, at least for me, you know, listen to them around September because it's that time of year. And then, you know, maybe not so much the rest of the year. And that's kind of a shame, especially because, you know, Paul's is so strong.
Yeah, especially this one. Like, I can already tell after this run through that I'm going to be putting this on rotation a lot more. Just
in general, as opposed to,
it's just
in regular
a fantastic album. Even, like, apart from it being a Kiss member solo album, like, it just is a fantastic standalone album. Even if those other 3 did not exist, it's perfect. I think it's so good. You can tell he was perfectionist with it.
Very much so.
Because, I mean, he doesn't miss. And I thought it was interesting, something I kind of picked up on this listen through, and this might just be my interpretation, but I know not every album is necessarily meant to tell a story in a linear way, but I wanted to listen to this with that in mind and kind of think, like, what kind of story is being told, and it's actually very interesting.
Okay.
I feel like the overall theme of, like, the lyrics and songs specifically on this album, they're definitely all about relationships. I don't think there's a single one that you could say is not relationship oriented, which is fine. That's most music is. That's what most music is about.
That's Paul Stanley.
Well, and that's what
That's about life is about. Yeah.
Right. That's what most people write about because it's the most relatable thing.
Yeah.
So obviously they're all about relationships, but I feel like the overall theme is like commitment, because the first song and one of the best on the album, "Tonight You Belong to Me," so good. That one, it sounds like he's actually being left in a relationship, but this is kind of their last night together, and he's like, "But tonight you belong to me. Like, okay. I know you're leaving, but tonight you belong to me." And he's saying, "You'll be sorry someday." So this person is leaving him, and he's obviously upset about it. But after that, we go on a big run of songs that are all about him not staying in relationships. And, like, move on. Like, obviously.
Yes, move on from, other fish in the sea.
Exactly.
Leave one behind, move on to the next.
Yeah, love him, leave him, basically.
Love him, leave him, yeah.
So it goes immediately into him not committing to any relationships and moving on. I feel like potentially because he has been scarred from this previous relationship.
Okay.
Ain't Quite Right is the same thing. He's leaving, even though it is good.
It just ain't quite
right. Like, you gave me good lovin'. Ain't quite right.
Right.
I'm leaving. Wouldn't You Like to Know Me is more fun, but it's still him rejecting a woman. Yep. You know what I mean? But then we have a little bit of a break in that storyline of him leaving, where we get to my personal favorite song on the album and my current obsession song right now, "Take Me Away, Together as One." Together as One. I am absolutely obsessed with this song.
It's beautifully written.
This song is like, it feels like a dream, first of all, and it's kind of is, he even references dreams. And actually, at the beginning of "Tonight You Belong to Me," he says, in a dream.
A long time ago.
So, in "Take Me Away," he's dreaming about that relationship again, I feel like. He remembers, you know what I mean? But it's not something that's currently happening. I remember together as one. So it's kind of like he's longing for that again. It's Alright is going back to the kind of one night stand, like, I'm not going to stay around, but if you want to stay for tonight, it's alright.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going back to that.
Forget tomorrow, just tonight matters.
Now, the only song that is, like, kind of out of place on this album, thematically and sonically, is "Hold Me, Touch Me." It's a great song, but it's just kind of a random, sappy, like, love song that doesn't, like, I don't know. It is good, and it's funny because it was the single of the album, but it feels the most out of place. Like, you could take it out, and
Interesting. Okay.
And I don't think it would matter. I just noticed that song has a parenthesis in the same way that "Take Me Away" does. Did you know that? "Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me When We're Apart."
Yes.
I didn't realize that title was so long.
Yep.
And then we get towards the end of the album, "Love in Chains" is actually him accusing somebody else of having commitment issues. "You keep your love in chains."
Yes.
So it's very interesting.
This is gonna sound. I hate to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
I'm loving where you're going with
this.
So I want you to finish, but I had this random thought listening to "Love in Chains." I was like, because him saying, "You keep your love in chains," it kind of made me think of you keep your goodies in the jar. It made me think of "Goodies" by Ciara, which is kind of a throwback for our generation. But,
yeah. That's great.
You keep your goodies in the jar. You keep your love in chains. It's the same idea where you're not just like out here, throwing love around.
Right.
It's something that you have to work for.
Very
and
reserved
it's
about
locked
it.
up.
Yeah.
And it's protected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Walls are up, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Walls are up.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting that he's kind of turning that around on another person.
Yeah.
Like, you keep your love in chains, when that's what he's been doing this whole album, is keeping his love in chains. And then we end on "Goodbye," which is a beautiful song and is kind of he's found a balance, because he's basically saying, "I'm leaving, but I'll be back." Is the concept of that one. So he's not just leaving completely. He's like, "I do have to go, but I'm coming back to you."
If you love something, set it free. And if it comes back, then it means something.
Maybe that's the theme.
So,
but I just thought it was interesting that I saw such a consistent theme throughout these songs.
So Paul's album so it's a concept album.
You could say that.
So I think you're onto something, because I know you're not, and even I'm not, like, as well versed into Paul's personal life in the 70s.
Right.
But if I recall correctly, almost every one of these songs is about a specific woman in his life at that time.
Yeah.
And each one is about, something that actually did happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them might be about the same person, or at least a couple of them.
A couple of them could be, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think especially Tonight You Belong to Me and Take Me Away together as one.
Yeah.
Feel like the same.
For sure.
The same story.
So if anybody has any insight to Paul's, personal life and some of these stories, please in the comments leave them down below, because I know that he has talked about some of this stuff in the past. I would like to maybe revisit Face the Music at some point, because I feel like it's been a long time, and that was just such a good book. And so I know you talked about some of your favorites, so maybe I can talk about some of mine, because I think by far my two favorites are Wouldn't You Like to Know Me and It's Alright.
Oh, okay.
Those two are my favorites, because even though this album is very, it is very sappy, but it's very elegant, and it's emotional, and there's some soft moments, very thematic moments. I like the hard rock songs.
Of course you do.
I am a rock and roll fan through and through. Yep. So songs like Tonight You Belong to Me, but also Wouldn't You Like to Know Me and It's Alright are just they've always been my two favorites, because they just have that driving sort of upbeat momentum. And don't get me wrong, I love Paul's songwriting and his ability to create soft, tender music like that. But again, being a rock and roll fan, I want that rock and roll. And so I do appreciate how he's able to perfectly marry those two things. Like with Tonight You Belong to Me, where the album starts off very slow and sweet. And so it gives you the idea, like, hey, there's going to be some emotion in this album. This is going to move you. This is meant to, you're meant to feel something. But he immediately goes into big chords. You get big drums. And then Paul's, whoa! You get full Paul Stanley. Yeah. So I like that balance that he brings to this album.
It's a dynamic album, and it
is very dynamic.
That's my favorite part about it. Most of these songs do start kind of slow, but just build such a grand place. I don't know, I love it.
And I think maybe perhaps some of the other solo albums maybe weren't as dynamic, and that's one thing that they were missing.
No, they were more flat.
Jeans did have some dynamic, but was it the right dynamic? Was it, were they strong songs? Were they as emotional and moving and thematic as these? No. And Aces really didn't need to be, because it was so hard-hitting. Again, I like the hard-hitting stuff, so that album was pretty good there. And then Peters, we know Peters was just kind of straight.
Pretty much the same across the board.
Straight across the board, yeah. So Paul's, I like the peaks and valleys in terms of speed.
Yes.
And the different voices that he uses, because he uses his full Paul Stanley stage voice, the Star Child voice, but then he goes into the
soft falsetto.
In a dream.
It's amazing.
A long time ago, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. He had already brought some of that to the table with Kiss,
right?
Already, like with Black Diamond, and most recently, I Want You. But I think that if Kiss fans in '78 were listening to this album, hearing Paul's opening track, you would feel pretty right at home.
Yeah,
I feel like. Yeah. As far as listening to Kiss. Now, maybe as you went on, you would move a little left of center and then go back to center and whatever, but still did a pretty good job at, keeping with what someone would expect from Paul Stanley. And it's still a perfect album.
It's great. It takes you on a journey, and that's what I love about this album.
But I like your idea of it being a concept record. I wasn't listening to it. I wasn't listening to it like that.
Yeah.
I was just listening to it like I always have since high school. But,
right.
But no, I like your interpretation, and so let me know, you guys, what your interpretations are. And because this is really cool stuff. We don't really get too deep into actual songs like this. This is really, really cool. I'm looking at it right now. I don't know if I've told you this before. Maybe I've mentioned it on the show, but I think it's funny because this is a misprint. This error, the CD.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't You Like Me to Know?
Yes, you showed me that before. That's hilarious.
So
Wouldn't You Like Me to Know?
So this is not a remaster CD. This is an original, CD before they did the remasters in the late 90s. And anyway, so on the back, track number 4 is not Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? It's Wouldn't You Like Me to Know?
That's so good.
And that threw me off for the longest time, because I always knew the song as Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? And when I always read it on the back, I thought, am I getting this wrong?
Right.
Is my MP3 player wrong? What is going on? And I looked into it more and realized that there actually were a handful of these, a lot of these that were like that. they were misprinted like that. So very interesting. Here you go, worth $1 million. Paul Stanley misprint CD. Get yours now. DMs only. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, yeah, there's Paul Stanley's 1978 solo album. Did you have any other thoughts to talk about? Any thoughts on this?
I don't think so. It's perfect. No notes.
Yeah. So and what I did was just put both CDs in the car and just let them go rotate, and never stop. And as soon as one song ends, or one album ends, let the other begin, and just rinse and repeat. Basically, this whole week.
Yeah.
And Live to Win, I must say, has never sounded better. Now, I personally have always been, well, not always, because I didn't listen to it for a while. Didn't know about it, or never heard it. But since hearing it, I've always been a big fan of the album. And I know that this is one of those divisive things amongst fans because, it didn't come out in the 70s, so obviously it's not good, right?
Right.
But no, the album is absolutely incredible, and I wish I could think back to what I was doing around this time in 06. Maybe I just wasn't interested in a Paul Stanley solo album at that time.
You might not have known
when I was
about
a kid.
It. Information was not as easily accessible.
But I knew about it at least in 09.
Okay.
Because I talked about how Live to Win, the song, was used in South Park.
Yes. Yeah.
And I saw that episode of South Park and thought it was crazy that they used the Paul Stanley song Live to Win. And I knew that song, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't, I guess, adamant about going and getting the record or bugging Dad about it and getting the record because I want to say the CD may have been sold in one of the Kiss catalogs from Kiss Museum back in the day. But for whatever reason, Jeb and I just never jumped at it. And so I don't think it may have been like 2013 when I first actually listened to the album.
That's crazy to think about.
Which is like several years after.
Only 11 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's crazy to think about. I think I was listening to and hearing songs and watching videos and clips of One Live Kiss from the tour for Live to Win before I even listened to the album.
So good.
So there's a handful of those songs I didn't even know what they were at the time, so it's kind of funny. But no, I absolutely love Live to Win, and I think I love it more now than ever because if I had to be honest, I think listening to these, I would recommend everybody after this episode, sometime during this week, whatever, listen to both the solo album, Paul's solo album, and Live to Win just back to back. I think that the albums sound best when you do it that way.
Okay.
Because it's the same guy. You know what I mean? Like some people think it's just two different people. It's two different things. Like it's the same dude.
Right.
Writing songs. It's a solo album by the same guy. You know what I mean? And a lot of the songs are about the same things.
Yeah.
Because, he was going through stuff as a young man with a bunch of, flings and things like that. Well, he was going through a divorce as a grown man before Live to Win. So
soon before this came out is when he got divorced?
Around 2001 is when he got divorced, right around there.
Okay.
Which is also when the Kiss Farewell Tour was going on. So he was just a miserable dude.
Yeah.
And then, Kiss was kind of coming back, but they hadn't even done a Live 35 yet. So Kiss was just kind of treading water, doing hit and run stuff. And he was painting, but Paul was just in a really weird spot.
Yeah.
And so I think right around this time, he started getting with Aaron.
Okay.
And maybe had just married Aaron.
Okay.
But was writing songs. So when you hear the songs, the love songs, they're about Aaron.
Yeah.
And the breakup songs are about probably, Pam, I guess.
Yeah. But this one's interesting because, there's a small section in the middle, Bulletproof, All About You, and Second to None, back to back to back, that are all, like, love songs.
Yeah.
But the rest of them are not. The rest of them are either just about life or breakup songs, and they're pretty.
Loving You Without You Now.
Dude, and they're pretty deep.
Wake Up Screaming.
Like this is like a lot of the same concepts of this, but this is like more grown up, more painful heartbreak than this.
This is this is like real depression.
Yeah. It's my concept of this album is the first song, Live to Win, is his philosophy on life and his just belief system, basically.
Especially coming out of all this.
Yes, like his current, at the time of writing this, his current mindset. And then the rest of the album is like the journey he took to get there.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because Wake Up Screaming is a really good song, and it's a very sad, very deep song. And you can just hear just the raw, painful sound just in his voice. He's so expressive, and you can feel the pain.
And Every Time I See You Around is another good one too.
That's one of my favorites.
But yeah, you can hear the heartbreak in in these songs. But yeah, I mean, Live to Win, I think, is one of my favorite songs.
It's so good.
Just because of what it says and what it speaks. I mean, that's how I want to live my life, right? I want to live to win. I like how he says, frustrated, degraded, down before you're done. Well, it's okay because you can get back, you can rise up, you can live to win.
Right, and he's
you
saying
can come
he
back,
was there.
You can bounce back. I was there. You may be there, but together we can fight together. So I mean, I like that, and I think there's a lot of similarities between these two solo albums, and I think you see that the most whenever you listen to them back to back.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think a lot of Kiss fans are so quick to compartmentalize everything and have this is this Kiss, this is that Kiss. Paul in the 70s, and this is Paul in the 2000s, and it's somehow different when it's really the same.
Right.
Like these are two chapters to the same book. It's the same guy.
Yeah.
It's just two different chapters on his life, and they're very similar in a lot of ways. It's just one is through the lens of a young man, and one's through the lens of a middle-aged man who, has gone through all those things and more, and is still experiencing those things and still dealing with that. And so
and
I just love how he expresses himself in that way.
Yeah, and if anything, if you like this one. Like, you really should check this out because, like you said, it's the same guy, but he is older and more mature and has had more experience in life and in songwriting. So I feel like the songwriting, maybe lyrically, is maybe even better, even though maybe sonically I might prefer the 78 one, but lyrically, definitely Live to Win. And something we actually found out earlier is that Desmond Child co-wrote a lot of these songs on Live to Win, like at least half.
Yeah, so I'm going to flip through here. It looks like Wake Up Screaming was written, let's see, Live to Win was written by Paul Desmond and another person named Andreas Carlson. Mm-hmm. And then Lift was written with, Paul Desmond and then Marty Friedrichsen.
Lift is a really interesting song because it's, on first listen, if you're not, catching every lyric.
The same thoughts I have.
On first listen, it almost sounds like a spiritual song.
Bingo.
Like a religious God kind of song.
When I first... Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what you think at first, but then you listen more and you realize he's using that as a metaphor for a relationship. Yeah.
Now that I thought was really interesting because, again, when I first heard this song, again, it was 2013, so it was a little bit later than... Kiss, they were doing Monster and all that, and so I wasn't really familiar with any of the material that Paul had done around this time. And when I heard Lift, I legitimately thought that Paul was trying to do a Christian rock radio hit.
Right.
Because it very much is written in that way. Musically, it sounds that way. And, I mean, I had lyrics right here, so I'll just kind of read everybody some of these lyrics. But it says, I never wanted to hurt you. Trust is broken. Salvation, lift me up. Forgive me with your touch. Higher, straight to your love. All you wanted was something real. Now I'm haunted. And it has all these lyrics, I mean, it sounds very, very, very spiritual. Forgive me with your touch. Straight to your love. Shaken to the ground. Fears wrapped around me. I mean, it does sound, and I think you're right. He was using that as like a relationship sort of metaphor. Where,
yeah. It sounds like what's happened is, maybe he's done something wrong and the relationship is broken because of that.
He needs forgiveness.
He is so desperately begging for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting metaphor to use, and it's a great song.
And the forgiveness that comes with that feels like salvation.
Yes.
The lifting of off your shoulder. Yeah. So I mean, it is very interesting, and it wasn't a song that I was actually prepared for from Paul.
It's different
lyrically and musically because Paul doesn't really do that. Mm-hmm. Paul doesn't, and he usually just does his own thing.
Yeah.
So to hear him pointedly kind of go for something like that was very interesting, and it caught my ear and it threw me off. Now, having said that, I think it might be my least favorite.
Really?
Off the album, just because again I'm a rocker, and so I want the All About You, the It's Not Me, you know, those songs, the ones that are really upbeat and driving. But having said that, Wake Up Screaming is one of my favorites.
That's so good.
And it has that very poppy drum intro. Those those very thin, poppy drums, which again, I did not expect Paul to include that on his album, and he did. And at first it kind of bothered me, but now I love it because it sounds very 06.
I was gonna say it's a very 2000s production, but I've learned to really appreciate that style.
And I appreciate it more listening to it back to back with this album because I'm not sure how it was with you, but like in my car listening to that, And then going to this was 10 times louder.
Oh, really? I'm listening to them both on Spotify, so it's been
okay, for
pretty
sure.
equal.
So as far as the albums go, and just the general production, this is way brighter.
Yeah, it's definitely great production.
Way crispier, way more clearer, which of course, again, that is 78. But that also serves to each album because you want that warm, crisp vinyl 70s sound. And you want that clear, crystal, modern production on this one. So they both, I think, are perfect albums in their own respect. And you can only get that to their fullest extent when you listen to them back to back.
Yeah.
So again, guys, listen to these albums back to back. I know some folks, again, are not big fans of Live to Win. Perhaps after listening to this episode, you may have different thoughts.
Yeah, give it a chance.
But give it a chance. Every Time I See You Around is a good song, but Bulletproof is one of the ones.
Bulletproof
kind of like
is one of my favorites.
Yeah, kind of like on the 78 album. Would You Like to Know Me is one of my favorites. Well, this one is too, for the exact same reasons. It's way more upbeat. Paul Stanley's using full vocals. We haven't even talked about Paul's vocals yet, really.
Oh, so
because,
good.
I mean, he was experimenting a lot on his 78 solo album. Mm-hmm. And he was using, of course, the full stage Paul Stanley voice of, the Star Child. But he was also using those, falsetto, those falsetto notes and hitting some of those, higher notes. And
he was really learning how to use his voice in different ways.
He was very much expanding. It was less, I'm the guy with the star on my face, whoa, just on stage. And it was more, okay, who's the guy underneath that?
Yeah.
What's that guy going through?
Yes.
And when I listen to these two albums versus any other Kiss album, I hear Paul Stanley more on these albums than I do any Kiss album. Because Kiss albums don't feel like the band is writing from their personal lives.
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily. They're writing from a place of how do we want to be perceived?
Right.
What's the fantasy that we want to live?
Right.
What's the fantasy that our fans expect us to be living?
They're writing in character, basically.
They're writing character.
Yeah.
And, with these albums, I mean, that one he was very much writing in character, but his character was based on himself.
Yeah, and they still feel like
a fantasized
real personal stories.
And they are real personal stories, and so that continues on with the real personal stories. But listening to a Kiss album, you don't really get that. Mm-hmm. That same sense of wow, Paul must have been... Maybe with some songs like I Still Love You, and Every Time I Look at You, maybe he was going through something with those songs and some other ones, but, Rise to It. And sometimes a song is just a song.
Right.
Creatures of the Night. There was never I saw a raccoon. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But not every song is coming from a place of
vulnerability and
or just a place of, realism. It could just be this song is this song because it's this song.
Yeah. And then
rock and roll night and party every day. It's just I want to rock and roll night and party every day over and over and over again. It's not that deep. Doesn't need to be that deep.
These songs are that deep.
These are about as deep as it gets. This is Paul finally taking a chisel taking a pickaxe and just getting in there.
See, and that's what personally what I look for in music and what I crave for music. So I really love these albums because I can feel that come through, and it's
absolutely
I don't know, you can write about such a specific relationship issue, but it's gonna be relatable to so many people. So even when it's very specific, it's still relatable, and I love that.
So I was going through some of the credits here, songwriting credits. I didn't really get through them all, but we know that Desmond Child wrote a lot of these songs and helped out. So I knew John 5 was on this album. Uh-huh. But I thought he was only on the last song, Where Angels Dare. Mm-hmm. Apparently, he performed the solo on Bulletproof.
Ooh, I love that solo, too.
That guitar solo is his. Dang. I did not know that.
That's such a good solo, too. I love Bulletproof.
I think it's cool that they have everything from the vocals to drums, guitar, percussion, keyboards, piano, programming. They have everything here.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. I must have never gone through this. This is really interesting. I wonder if he was on any other song, John 5, because I know he's a huge Kiss fan. And I'm pretty sure I saw at some point where, let me just get the last page here, where it has, he helped write the song too.
Okay. The last one, Where Angels Dare?
Yeah, Where Angels Dare. So he, Desmond, and Paul wrote that together.
Wow.
Paul, Desmond, and John 5.
What a trio.
And then John 5 did the guitars and the solo for the song too.
Nice.
That is super cool because I did not know that until, I mean, I don't know when I learned that, but I definitely didn't listen to that song and go, who else is on guitar?
Right.
Because maybe this is a testament to just how good John 5 is, but nothing about that stood out to me as being John 5.
Right.
In the best way possible, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's like it's a solid.
It goes to show just how well of a musician John 5 is, to where he can blend. I mean, he can do the Rob Zombie stuff, Motley Crue. He can perform on an 06 album or an 04 album, whatever, with... was it 06, I think?
I think 06.
06, yeah. An 06 album with Paul, and just blend in and really serve the music.
Yeah.
You know, nothing about it felt out of place. So I'm kind of stunned, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
He had more involvement than I thought. Now, Loving You Without You Now is written by Paul and Paul only.
Is that the only one that's self-written
That
completely?
is the only one that I'm seeing so far. Andreas Carlson has made a few appearances. Holly Knight is on this as well. Holly Knight has written with Kiss, I believe, in the past. That's definitely a name I remember seeing on the lyric sheets. Andreas Carlson again on All About You. So yeah, that one I think was the only one that was written by Paul. Pete Masidi helped write Every Time I See You Around. I don't know who that is. So Paul wrote with a few people on this album, and they wrote some dang good songs.
Absolutely. I love it.
I think if I had to say something to kind of critique Live to Win and maybe what could have been better or what did not serve the project for the better is the imagery, which is maybe a little bit kind of odd to say. But when I look at the album itself, the front cover is cool-ish. It's kind of like the one from '78, but not quite as striking.
It's too generic.
It's a little generic.
It's too beige.
The back cover is very beige. It gives me what I would call the Buck Cherry vibes.
Yeah.
The late '07 rock and roll vibe. You know what I mean?
It's definitely of its time, but it doesn't stand out.
It's very of its time. '06 middle-aged rock and roll.
Right.
And maybe back then it served well, but looking back on it, I think that the packaging could have been a lot more cool.
I'm with you.
I'm not saying it needs to be Kiss and eye-popping.
Not Star Child necessarily.
But it could be a lot more Paul Stanley. Now, maybe the colors do have a purpose because of what he was going through at that time.
And he does look very sad
and he's not
on the
looking
back.
at the camera, so maybe he is, purposely looking very sad.
I think it's supposed to be moody, but I do feel like the moodiness...
that would have been a cool album cover, in my opinion.
I love that.
With the blue shirt, that's with the sky, there's depth.
It's
you know
dramatic,
what I mean?
but I love it.
Imagine that, but he looks like he's living to win.
Yeah.
He looks like he's living to win, more so than he is, here.
Yeah.
So, they could have used, what was the other one I saw? Oh, look at that one.
Oh, I do love that
That's
one.
a good one. Check out that photo.
That's a great photo.
We've all seen these photos.
Classic Paul Stanley pose.
So, they could have used any of these for the album cover. I get maybe the album cover is fine the way it is because Paul would want to go with a very simplistic album cover, just a face shot. But certainly the back cover and then the back to this. Look, you can't even read Live to Win. It just blends in. It should be white.
Yeah. It's supposed to be kind of grungy, and I get it, but yeah, I don't know. And the face alone on the album cover is fine to me, but I almost wish that if they were going to do that, they would have gone for it even more and not even put the text on the album cover. I think it would look cooler with just the photo. I
would want Live to Win on there somewhere.
I don't need it. Sometimes I like album covers that don't have the title on the front.
I get that. I don't know. There's a million ways I'm sure it could have been done. But it is what it is now.
It's still a great photo.
Now, what I will say I like about it, and this is something that I did not really notice until earlier when I was, kind of looking at the album, is the back of it looks like it's been ripped and taped up.
Yeah.
Which, maybe it's, again, how he feels. And maybe it's a metaphor for how he feels. It's a visual representation of how he feels on the inside.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's putting himself back together.
Maybe it's just to add texture to the CD. I don't know. Even the disc itself kind of looks like that, right? Where it's taped up.
Yeah, I never noticed that.
The star's been taped.
Yeah, because the star is very janky, hand drawn.
Maybe it's carved or cut.
Maybe I never noticed the tape.
Interesting.
There's Scotch tape all over it. That is very. I think
another concept album.
I think
Paul's dropping subliminals, man.
Yeah, I think that's definitely intentional.
That's funny.
Because this album, like I said, it is basically about him, how he got to the mindset he's in now and the good place he's in now by going through a bunch of terrible stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
You just put yourself back together. That's what you do.
Yep. I'm going to put this back up, and I want to do a quick lyrical analysis and just bring this up, because I thought this was really kind of cool. And I want to do more lyrical analysis.
Please, I love that
on
stuff.
This show, now that the tour's over, and we can kind of just lay back and chillax a little bit. Anyway, so one thing I noticed about these two albums lyrically and how they were similar was particularly the last song on the Setting It Solo album, Goodbye, and the last song on Live to Win, which is Where Angels Dare. There was a couple sets of lyrics that I don't think it's going to sound as profound as it was when I first realized it, but I thought it was cool just to hear some of the similarities between the lyrics. For instance, in Goodbye, you have lyrics like, people wonder why they don't get a chance. They wait for music, but don't get to dance. Ain't it funny how we win, but we lose? We're given prizes that we don't get to use. And then, in Where Angels Dare, off Live to Win, there are some lyrics that say, for instance, here's a line, some people wait forever, some people just run out of time, some people live in darkness and give up just before the light. And so, I don't know how intentional that was, but
you just blew my mind with that, actually.
He's just talking about how, I mean, life is sometimes just as bad as it is good.
Yeah.
Opportunities can be missed if they're not seized.
Right.
You know, and he's very sort of introspective about life and just... I never really... And maybe it was him like, oh, how can I like throw back to the last song on my last album? Maybe it was him just being Paul Stanley this whole time.
That's amazing.
But both of those lyrics in those songs, they're two different songs completely.
But those are completely parallel trains of thought. That's so interesting. I never noticed that. I love that.
Now, I don't know if I'm getting just a little,
I love it. Keep going.
But so in Goodbye, like he says, goodbye, I'm going away, but I'm coming back.
For now. I'm coming back.
I swear somehow.
Yeah.
And then Where Angels Dare, he says, some way, somewhere, I'm going to take you there. I'm coming back. I'm back, and I'm taking you there. So not only has he came and went and said he's coming back, but now that he's come back and now that it's ending, he's taking you into the horizon, the sunset, Neverland, to heaven, whatever it is, it's Where Angels Dare. He's taking you.
Wow.
So he's gone, he's come back. He told you he would, and here he is, and now he's saying we're going on.
That's so good.
Interesting. I don't know if Paul.
You really caught something.
I don't know if Paul planned that or not, but.
It's brilliant either way, because either he planned it and that's just incredible, intelligent songwriting that he never even bragged about. He just put it on there to see if anybody would notice. That's amazing. But if it was an accident, that's just as amazing. Because he's just brilliant without even thinking about it.
Yeah, so it's just to show how crazy life is.
That's awesome.
But, I mean, again, folks, to me, like, I was listening to these albums, I was like, they're really not that different.
No.
Like, they're very much of their time, because Paul was living at that time and recording at that time, so that makes sense. But he's really just talking about himself and his experiences in life, and it's crazy how similar they kind of are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one thing that I don't want to forget about, it's kind of random, but on Live to Win, on Every Time I See You Around, there is a moment that where he goes, I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
Yes.
And that reminds me exactly of a Soul Station. What Soul Station song is that? Where he does that same thing.
I can't stand it. Is it Save Me, maybe? Or is it IOI? I don't know.
It might be IOI.
It's one of them.
It sounds so similar.
I kind of want to figure it out.
I can't stand it.
But you're right, there is a very similar part there.
Because I don't think I hadn't really listened. I mean, definitely some individual songs, but I hadn't really listened all the way through Live to Win very intentionally in a while, like in a few years, honestly, and since becoming familiar with all the Soul Station songs. So I'd never noticed that before, but as soon as I got to that part, I was like, oh, I know that.
Okay, yes, it is IOI.
Okay.
IOI is the song where he says, what can I say or do to get back at you? I can't stand it.
Yep.
So you're right, there are two parts on two Paul solo albums where there's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's another thing where I wonder if that's just like an ad-lib that fit, or if he like remembered that he did the same thing on Live to Win.
Interesting.
I love it.
That's really cool. It's a cool throwback. But anyway, so I guess we could talk about Live to Soul Station a little bit,
because I didn't really
listen to it in preparation for this episode. But what was the last time that we listened to it? Soul Station. Or maybe it was just me by myself, but I could have swore that the last time you, I, we, me, I don't know, listened to it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, these songs are also very similar to his Live to Win and Civic Soul album songs. Again, the originals, IOI,
right?
Save Me
Because a
From
lot of
You.
them are covers.
There's a couple other ones that are really good. And I had the lyrics up, but I closed them out now. But I was listening to those songs, and again, they're all about relationships. Mm-hmm. And just hearing Paul write original music was fantastic.
Yeah.
But those were also good songs. It wasn't like, oh, they're just good because, Paul wrote them. It was like, dang!
Some of them, they stand out even over the covers of classic, incredible songs that were covered very well.
Like, Kiss didn't quit making music because they had no more ideas.
Exactly.
The juice didn't run out.
Yeah.
They didn't, wring every lyric dry.
No.
Certainly not. I mean, Paul put pen to paper on Soul Station, and I loved it.
He's still got stuff up there.
I know that I hope he's got something else.
He has.
Coming.
He's got something. I just feel it.
I really hope so, because I thoroughly enjoyed Soul Station. I think in the beginning, I was mostly just supporting it to support Paul.
Right.
And
this is not my kind of thing.
Because I knew that, and I still don't really listen to that kind of music.
Yeah.
And it's not because I think it's bad, it's just because, again, I prefer more upbeat, heavier, harder music. And found that actually on Soul Station, again, Paul's original material was the best. Yeah. Because it was Paul Stanley, and I could tell.
And it does have, even though it still seamlessly fits with the vibe of the rest of the album, it does have a little bit more of an edge to
drums.
It, and a little bit more rock and roll.
Yes, it's the way the songs were written.
Yes.
You can tell.
Yeah, you can tell. Well, you can tell that he has mostly written rock music for his entire career, because we've talked about how, some of those songs, if you change the production and the instrumentation, it could be a rock song. It could
it's rock and roll.
It could be a Kiss song.
Yeah.
It's just the way he writes. I love it.
Some of those songs on Soul Station, they have that sound where, the drummer has to lightly tap on the hi-hat and use the wooden stick on the rim.
Yep.
On just the quiet, those songs.
Yeah, just the jazzy kind of drums.
The jazzy kind of real slow, quiet songs. And then Paul comes in with, in his originals, a lot of them, or at least a couple of them, were full-on drums and guitar, just were in it, and it's just four on the floor. It's a real rock song. Eric's back here playing drums, and it was like, that's what I want, and that's what I love.
We've just added, horns and saxophones and stuff.
So in Soul Station, yeah, exactly. So when that album came out, Now and Then, I was kind of just looking to support Paul and get outside my comfort zone and appreciate some of the artists and some of the songs that Paul liked.
Yeah.
And that was all good and fine. But what I walked away from that was, holy crap, I just got Paul Stanley original music.
Yeah.
And it was good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, oh, man, he fell off, or, man, that would have been great 10 years ago. It was like, please put out more.
Yeah.
The next album he does should have more originals with a few covers.
Agreed, 100%.
And if he wants to, I wonder if Paul would ever be inclined to do another rock and roll solo album. Because
that's interesting.
I don't know what year it was, and I can't remember when it was, but there was a time where Paul said that he was very much open to and inclined to, was going to write a more guitar-driven album. Mm-hmm. He said that he felt like Live to Win wasn't quite as guitar-driven as the 78 album, with more rock and, punchier drums. And so I wish I could think back to what year that was or when it was, but he was talking about how he was open to the idea of doing another solo album with a more rock base to it.
I would love to see that.
Having bigger production on drums and have it being a more drum and guitar album.
Yeah. As
opposed to Live to Win, which was more emotional and had a little bit more of a poppier sound to it. But I loved Live to Win, no matter what. But yeah, I would like to think that Paul would do that. But I just don't know if it's realistic, though. Because if he's going to do Soul Station, he might just do Soul Station.
Well, but, we have to keep in mind, he's got time. He's in no rush anymore.
No.
But I don't see why he couldn't eventually. If he still has that desire, I don't see why he couldn't eventually do both. If Paul McCartney can still make albums in his 80s, Paul Stanley can still make... Not that he has to, and not that he would want to, but... I can definitely see it. Because especially, I do hope he does more Soul Station, but, if you think about it, a solo album would be, I don't want to say easier, but I feel like maybe more manageable, because it'd be a smaller group of people that he'd be working with.
Yeah.
Whereas Soul Station is a huge production.
The 13-piece orchestra,
yes,
plus him and Eric. And,
it's a ton of people and a ton of musicians that you have to hire and teach these songs to. Whereas, if he's mostly the one, maybe with a couple co-writers, writing all the songs, and then he gets a handful of his friends that are musicians to be on the album, I feel like that's definitely something I could see happening in the next few years.
And it really wouldn't be that costly, too.
Right.
I mean, it would be something definitely for him. It wouldn't be like, the next, biggest platinum-selling rock album or anything. Right. And that's one thing I think that might prevent Paul from doing that, because Paul's the kind of guy that wants everything he does to be a hit. To be a hit, to be big, and so he's not going to settle for anything less. So.
Right. I hope he gets away from that. I hope he decides to make things because he wants to make things.
Yeah.
And for no other reason at all. Because that's what I want to see. I don't want to see him try to please anybody in particular. I just want to know what he wants to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. I will say also, even though we did listen to both of these albums and we talked about Soul Station, I also listened to One Live Kiss
on
Spotify.
Good. I need to listen to that again too.
And I'm surprised. I was wondering if you would catch me.
No.
Because when you were working in the other room, and I was working next to you, I think you had your headphones in.
Yeah.
But you took them out and started singing along.
Oh, I didn't even
to, I think it was Got to Choose,
That's
maybe
so
a
funny.
couple other ones. So I was wondering if you were going to ask, what Kiss album is this?
I didn't know that.
And I was going to say, actually, it's One Live Kiss. So I didn't have to actually spoil it.
Man.
But listening to...
I wish you would have, because then I would have remembered to listen to it.
I know.
I will now. I will.
Yeah, I was listening to, of course, these albums in my car, but while I was, editing on the computer, I was like, I still don't want to, get too far away from Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
I want to keep it in the Paul Stanley camp. I was like, One Live Kiss.
I always forget it's on Spotify.
It's the best not Kiss live album.
It's fantastic.
The set list, the track list is incredible. He not only played songs from his 78 solo album and Live to Win, but he played all kinds of Kiss songs too that never get played. Magic Touch,
yes.
A Million to One.
A Million
it
to
was
One
crazy
so
having
good.
A Million to One. What was the other one I just mentioned?
Magic Touch.
Magic Touch, A Million to One, Live to Win, I Still Love You. What was the other one? He had a couple from Live to Win. I think Lift he played, and then what was the other one? I don't know if it was Every Time I See You Around or one of the other ones, but he played another one off Live to Win, or Second to None. I think it was Second to One. So and Bulletproof.
Yes,
and
I do remember that.
So seeing Bulletproof and I Still Love You and all these Kiss songs and Paul songs
all together.
from old and old and new together was just crazy. And then of course he was sounding incredible.
So good.
At that time.
The band was incredible.
I think Live to Win and the solo album too is kind of interesting because the solo album was like the first time that Paul was truly professionally, artistically exploring his vocals and what he could do. And as far as all that goes, and then with Live to Win, he had obviously gone through that whole vocal maturation, whatever, and was now like still at his peak, really.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, I know that like as the years went on and as touring increased, that took a toll.
Definitely.
And that happens, and that's going to change. But when he was recording Live to Win, he was still in that element where he was writing songs for his voice.
Yeah.
I think on this album too, the Southern Soul album, Paul was starting to write for his voice. And certainly by Crazy Nights, he was definitely writing for his voice. He was like, what can I do?
Right.
What can I just, anything and everything go. Yep. And even though it wasn't quite like that on Live to Win, you still had these moments where he's just in full Paul power mode. And I can't help but the song "It's Not Me" is one of my favorites on this album.
That's so good. We didn't talk about that.
I talked about how "It's Alright" and those songs are my favorite off this album. Well, "It's Not Me" and "Bulletproof" and those songs are those songs for me on this album because "It's Not Me" is just something about that song is just incredible.
A really good song because that's like the whole sonically it's amazing, obviously, but the whole concept of that song is really interesting and not something that you hear written about a lot.
Yes, I'm not your
obvious.
savior. I'm not going to be the one to just make all your problems go away.
Yeah. And
don't put me on a pedestal when you have problems that you need to deal with.
Right, yeah. I'm not your cure. Find somebody else.
I'm not your cure.
And it's interesting because the way it's written, I obviously don't know who he was writing about. I don't need to know. But it can be interpreted as like a romantic relationship, or a previous romantic relationship, or not. It doesn't even have to be. It literally could just be a person that you're close to in your life. It's not. If you listen to it, it's not really. I don't feel like there's anything in it that specifically signifies it's a relationship and not like an ex-friend or...
So you're saying that it could be about somebody who's maybe a friend who's just taking advantage of him, or
then he's over
a friend who's projecting onto him, and Paul's like, I can't. Yeah. It's not me, man.
Yeah, and even if that's not what he wrote it about, it can be related to in that way, and I really like that.
It's vague enough to have other... I like that. See, I always thought about it as a relationship.
I did too, because most of the album, I would say, is about a or multiple relationships. But I think that's an interesting one because it can apply to other relationships in your life other than just romantic.
I totally agree. Yeah. I like that. I never thought about it that way. For me, it's not me was always my favorite because of his just the vocal the chorus.
Yeah.
It's not me.
It's so good to scream in your car.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to be another Curie. I'm not your savior. As soon as he goes up with it, and now there's danger every second that you breathe. Perfect song. I think somebody commented on the status I posted on Instagram. I was talking about, best Paul Stanley songs or whatever, and somebody commented, "It's not me" from Live to Win. I thought, dude, absolutely. I'm behind that because I love that song. And so I wonder now what the topic should be, because we went through pretty much everything from solo albums, Soul Station, future music. I'm thinking now I could just tell a couple stories about Paul Stanley, because I did get to meet him.
You did meet Paul Stanley.
One time. And so I thought that it'd be really cool to tell some stories real quick. This one I'm going to tell is actually both of them are from the 2014 Indianapolis Kiss Expo. Mm-hmm. So this is where, Paul... made an appearance. This is the one and only time I got to meet Paul, and I was Jeb as well, and we were both very excited because the year before Gene was a special guest, and we were always like, oh, we'll never meet Gene, we'll never get a meet and greet, we'll never, all that. And so lo and behold, here comes Gene, special guest at the Indie Expo, and we're thinking, oh, dude, you can't top that expo. There's nothing you can do to top that expo, man. That was crazy. And then the next year, friggin' Paul Stanley's added as a guest almost last minute while he was on his book signing tour.
I hate that I wasn't going to expos at this time.
Sucks. And it's crazy because Jeb and I almost missed this expo.
Oh my gosh.
Because what Jeb and I wanted to do, and it's funny because I think we would have if it were today, but because it was back then, we were a little younger. We weren't gonna do it, but. So once Paul had released Face the Music, this is 10 years ago. It's been about a decade. So when Paul released Face the Music, he went on, his big book signing tour and all that. And one of the places that he was visiting was, I'm pretty sure, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay.
Or somewhere in Kentucky, deep into Kentucky.
Yeah.
And our thought was, oh, it's Kentucky.
That's close.
Oh, that's like, that's right there. So
not everywhere in Kentucky is close.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So we said, well, we'll just go to that book signing.
Yeah.
And not go to the expo this year because, again, Paul was not added as a guest yet.
Right.
So far, all there is the Indie Kiss Expo with Bruce and Tommy, which is amazing. Or there's, we could go to the Paul Stanley book signing event in Kentucky. And we said, okay, well, meeting Paul is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So we're going to take this trip to Kentucky. And once we realized how long it was going to be, it was like 3 or 4 hours, which at the time we weren't going to do that.
No.
We've driven longer for concerts and all that, but at the time, just wasn't going to do it. And so I think we drove like an hour and a half to meet Gene.
Right.
That to us was like a road trip.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was like a road trip, boys, So this, we were like, that's a little too long. So we're not going to do that. And we were kind of bummed because we had decided that we were not going to the Kiss Expo. Mm-hmm. And we were going to this event. And then once we realized that wasn't going to happen, it was almost too late to go to the Kiss Expo. We thought, well, tickets have been on sale this whole time, so we may miss out. And all of a sudden, Paul Stanley gets added as a special guest at the Indie Expo, and he's adding a stop in Indy combined with the Expo for his book signing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like conjoined into one. And that's when we were like, dude, this is the best of both.
Stars aligned.
You're kidding.
Perfect.
So we immediately went and got tickets for that. And usually, when we buy tickets to expos, we're always on it.
We're so quick.
We're always
we're always
like second and third in line.
Yep.
We're always waiting there, right at the front of the line because we get them on sale.
Right.
And I think Jeb and I were like 141, 142.
Dang.
I mean, we were way back there. And actually, I should say this first because Paul was really late to the event, and it was not his fault at all. Of course, the event was already crazy as it is because you already have your trivias, your raffles, and your trivia bands, your Q&As. I mean, you have Tommy and Bruce, who are already guests doing pictures and autographs. So there's all this stuff going on, and they really did just squeeze the Paul Stanley like right in the middle of it. I mean, they had jeans planned out. It was it was an entire pre-expo event, from like 10 to 1, and then the rest of the day was the regular expo, and that was the Gene Simmons pre-expo kickoff event. They had to pay extra for, but also got free access into the whole weekend, whatever. So who cares? We did that. It was fantastic. Paul Stanley's was you have the expo, and then Paul's going to make an appearance, do a Q&A, and you're going to get to walk up and meet him, basically. Either way, it's still meeting Paul Stanley in the flesh. So we're super excited, except he's not there. And I think Keith, at some point, or Steve, or whoever gets on stage, says, hey, everybody, so Paul's flight has been delayed. He said that Paul had been up until 3 a.m. the night before signing our books for Indianapolis, because what he usually did on the book signing tour was you would walk up and you would either buy the book from him or you already had your book.
And he'd sign,
and he would sign it and then, move on. But because this is a KISS Expo and not a Paul Stanley event only, the books had to be pre-ordered in advance, and they were signed in advance. And then they were just given to you.
Because he was also taking pictures and stuff. So they want to make this streamlined.
And so if it was a normal Paul Stanley event, it would just be a regular thing. And there were some fans who were really upset because they were like me. They bought the book when it came out.
Yeah.
I had mine pre-ordered.
Yeah.
And it came on the day of release. And then I was going to bring that to the expo, and they said, no, you have to buy another book from us. Because anybody could just say, well, I don't want the book, forget that. I just want to meet Paul Stanley.
Right.
Well, Paul's doing a book signing tour. Right. So if it's not book related,
you don't get to meet him.
You don't get to meet him. You know what I mean? So that did make some fans mad. Me, I just gave my book to my friend and said, this is my other copy. You know what I mean? You can have that copy, the not signed copy.
Right.
I want the autographed copy.
Perfect.
And so they were like, look, Paul was up till 3, 4 in the morning last night signing everybody's books. And got a couple hours of sleep and was supposed to be at the Chicago airport, and his flight was delayed, so he's currently just waiting at the airport.
That sucks.
And I felt so bad because even though it does seem like rich people problems, like being at the airport, like that does suck.
It sucks no matter who you are.
I don't want to be. I wouldn't want to be stuck at an airport. It's like being stuck in traffic.
Well,
nobody wants to be stuck in traffic.
Especially when there's somewhere that you're supposed to be and
hundreds
of
of people
are waiting on you. But there's literally nothing you can do. There's nothing you did to cause this, and there's nothing you can do to fix it.
Exactly. So they warned us. They warned us that any event with Paul, as far as meeting him and Q&As and all that, was going to be pushed back.
Yeah.
They didn't know how long, but indefinitely. So just be warned. We're like, okay, fine. We'll just keep shopping. And
we got time.
We'll keep shopping and we'll keep doing all this stuff. We met Darius.
Nice.
That day. I may have mentioned him on the show before, but in case anybody's not sure who I'm talking about, shout out to Darius. So while Jeb and I were at the expo, it was the same day I bought that firehouse hat I was wearing in the beginning. Bought that at the expo. Anyway, so while Jeb and I were at the expo, we saw this gentleman who was in full uniform. You could tell he had served in the military or in the army in some capacity. And in fact, it was National Armed Forces Day that day. And so you couldn't help but just recognize, this man. And clearly he had some involvement in our military, had served our country. And so we went up to him and said, hey, we don't know who you are, but we just want to say, thank you for your service. Happy Armed Forces Day. And it's cool that you're a KISS fan. And of course, boom, there you go. Conversation started. Yep. So now we're just talking about KISS. And he was telling us, I could think back to when, I was in the front lines listening to Sonic Boom in Iraq. And I was like, wow, that's real shit.
That's crazy.
That's real stuff. And Sonic Boom isn't that old,
Yeah.
So I was like, man, so he was like actually in the stuff, listening to KISS and, was getting through, and KISS had been like his fair band his whole life, and so, we're getting his story and all that. And he was really kind enough to save our seats for the Q&A.
Aww.
Because once it was announced that it was going to be, later on, until Paul arrived, we were kind of bummed. Because we're like, well, now what do we do? And so we're like, we want to shop, but we also just, like, went through heck to get these seats. And Jeb and I had gotten seats with Darius way up front.
Yeah.
Like, second row, maybe? Second or third row. Paul's, like, from me to you guys on stage, And so we got those seats, and, like, we don't want to leave. But we also don't want to sit here for a couple more hours and miss the expo. And so Darius was kind enough to watch our seats for us. He was like, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to sit here. So if you want, I'll just keep your guys' seats nice and protected for you. And so we went and shopped around for a couple hours until Paul actually did the Q&A. And he kept our seats. He said, yep, so you guys go. Moved his jacket. We actually brought stuff and said, hey, we bought a bunch of stuff. We don't want to lug it around. We didn't actually drive. We had somebody drive us and drop us off.
Oh, okay.
So we couldn't bring our crap to our car like we usually do.
Right.
And so we said, can we leave it here? Will you watch it? Yeah, no problem, dude. So he was so cool and was there to just, watch our stuff and save our seat. So, and got to see Darius, of course, at the last Indianapolis
I got to meet him.
Concert. Yeah, you did for the first time. You've heard about him all these years, but never did meet him. So that was really cool. And unfortunately, they came back on stage and said, so Paul's flight just got delayed again.
I forgot about that part.
And I was like, ugh. I felt really bad for Paul at this point. And there were fans that were pissed.
Yeah.
There were fans. I said, you guys can't be upset about this.
You can be frustrated at the situation.
But you can't be upset at Paul or any of the organizers or anything. This is
who could you possibly blame in this
I felt
situation?
so bad for Paul, dude, because we know that Paul is sitting at the airport, just him alone, like this, just like, gosh,
come on.
and just dang near frustrated. So I felt really bad for him, but eventually he does get there. He does an amazing Q&A. You guys can find the whole Q&A on YouTube. I think Kenny Begley uploaded it.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can check out Kenny's channel and watch it. Great Q&A. I think Bruce even at some point joined him, or he joined Bruce. One of the two.
Yes, I was going to say, I've seen pictures of them side by side on stage.
But yeah, I think I have a couple videos that I took of Paul talking about Bruce, how awesome Bruce is. Bruce talking about how awesome Paul is. I think Tommy joined Bruce at some point. So it's crazy seeing all those.
That's so cool. What a great expo.
Members of KISS on stage at the same time. But I want to tell this story because we're in line to meet Paul now. Mm-hmm. This is the best part, right? So we get in line to meet Tommy, we get in line to meet Bruce, we get in line for all the autographs. Now that Paul has finally arrived, it's finally time to get in line to meet the Star Child. And while we were in line, we actually met Bob and Darren. You know Darren Smith.
Yeah.
So we actually met Bob and Darren for the first time that day in line.
Nice.
And we're going to be actually seeing Darren, hopefully, at the Ace Show coming up next weekend.
Next weekend, yeah.
Crazy. And so Darren and Bob are behind us, lifelong KISS fans, huge KISS fans, and they are just cracking us up.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're kind of way back there in line, so we're just kind of waiting, and it's just kind of like slowly inching forward, and they started cracking jokes. Like, I bet somebody's up there giving them their sob story about how they were rear-ended at a red light in 87, and then when Crazy Nights came on, it just like changed their life.
Yes.
And that just made me laugh.
That's hilarious.
So I love KISS humor, and so we were just laughing the whole time that we were in line, slowly getting closer. And at a certain point, they had tables that were lined with merch and with vinyl and all that. I mean, they had stuff all over the expo hall anyway.
Right.
Because it's a KISS expo. But even outside the hallway, going to actually meet, Paul, there was like a separate, table and stuff with more merch and more vinyl and like exclusive stuff, really rare stuff. And so I could see it the whole time. As I'm looking, and I'm telling Jeb, I cannot wait to get my hands on there. I can't wait to look and see what they got in this bin. And so,
I know exactly where this is going.
So we're getting closer and closer, and I'm trying to look and see what they've got. But the guy in front of me is just standing there, taking his sweet time, looking at everything, and not caring about anybody behind him. And I'm
just like reading
and I'm
the back of every record.
I'm a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Because, again, you're standing in line and you get to look at this stuff while you're waiting.
Yeah.
If you want, you can buy it. But how can you look and even have a chance when the one guy who's like, oh, just go around me, whatever. The line's moving around him.
Right.
And he's standing there looking. And, I mean, you guys know me. I'm the happy guy. Ha, 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 whatever. No, I'm, like, to the point where I'm getting frustrated. Like, what's this guy? Who's he think he is, And I'm about this close to tapping him. Like, hey, buddy, what's the big idea, whatever. And now this is why you never lash out, okay? This is why you always keep your cool, maintain your cool. Because I go look at this guy. It's Bruce Kulick. It's Bruce Kulick. I'm getting mad and huffy about Bruce Kulick. And I get it now. He's actually looking at his era vinyl.
Yeah.
It's like Revenge blue vinyl from the UK or whatever.
He's
That's not real.
Picture
But
and his name
I'm
on
just,
the back.
Yeah. So he's looking at some exclusive, some rare vintage, Kiss vinyl album with him on the cover, with him in the liner notes. And so he's just looking at every scale inch of
appreciating it.
Appreciating it,
Yeah.
whatever. And so he's not in line. He's not a fan. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just Bruce Kulick existing. And so I was like this close to getting real fed up. And instead, I just kind of got my phone out and took a quick picture of him just to kind of like...
moved on.
Well, no, just to like capture that moment.
Yeah.
Because I think I still have the picture. And so it's always funny to me when I think back about getting mad at that Kiss fan looking at vinyl.
Great.
And it's just Bruce looking at Kiss Alive 3 or something.
Yeah.
And that story was always really funny to me. But finally, we get there. There's Paul Stanley. And it was about 5 seconds, I think. As I walked up, and he said hi. I said hi. And he put his hand on my shoulder, got the picture, and then left.
Yeah.
And, I mean, because, again, he was late. So it was already going to be rushed. But now it's extra rushed because we started hours late.
Yeah.
So they were pushing people through the line.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I want to be one of those people who just does what I'm supposed to do, go up, say hi, smile, leave? Or do I try and be one of those folks that tries to make a memory out of it?
Yeah.
Try and maybe give something back to him, or say something to him. And
tell
so
him how much you appreciate.
The whole time I went back and forth.
Yeah.
Not knowing what I was going to do. And so as soon as the flash was taken and they were moving me on to the next guy, and I'm kind of getting pushed away, and Paul's already looking at the next guy, I knew that my chance was, this is it, this is over.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I could think of to say was, I said, hey, Paul, you're the best singer I've ever heard. You're the greatest singer ever, man. Okay. And he heard it, was like, oh, thank you, and, went on to the next person.
That's
but
awesome.
That was...
I'm glad you threw something out there.
I couldn't... I was like, dude, say something. Do
literally
something.
Anything.
Yeah, anything. I was like, Paul, you're my favorite singer, my favorite songwriter. I love you. You're the best singer ever. Something like that.
Yeah.
And he was always like, oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm glad he still heard it and responded
to
it.
So, yeah, he quickly responded.
So you still have
But I was like, man, you could have, whatever. But, I mean, when you're 19, 18, what are you going to do? So, I'm just... cool to meet Paul Stanley.
Yeah, and it's cool that you did have a little bit of a moment where you said something.
And I got the picture with him.
It's an awesome picture.
It's an amazing picture. I post it every year on his birthday. I'm sure you guys saw it. Hopefully there's one more chance in the future where we can all meet him again. But that was the one and only time I got to meet Paul Stanley. And that actually leads me to one final story.
Okay.
And then we can, start wrapping up. But this one's a quick story, and it's really funny. So this has nothing to do with Kiss, actually. But this goes back to when my buddies and I were in high school. We were having one of our epic New Year's Eve parties.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I was downstairs by myself doing something. Everybody else was upstairs. And I forget what was going on, but I was downstairs. Everybody was upstairs. We were all about to eat, or we were all about, getting ready to eat. And one of my buddies yells down the basement. I can't see him because I'm on the other side, but he yells down, "Hey, do you want to meet Paul Stanley?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Alex," I said, "do you want to meet Paul Stanley?" And I'm not believing the words that I'm hearing.
What?
So at this point, I get a little closer to him, a little closer to the door. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I said, do you want a meatball sandwich?" I was like, "Oh,
I had no idea where this was going.
No, thank you. I'm good, thank you."
I don't.
So I went from like the highest to highs to the lowest. I mean,
he's here. Like he just walked in.
Maybe it would have been a fire meatball sandwich. But I was like, "Do you want to meet Paul?" I was like, "Yeah, I want to meet Paul Stanley," but I didn't say that because I was like, "There's no way I'm hearing that." "Do what?" "Do you want a meatball sandwich?" And I was like, "No, I don't want a fucking meatball sandwich. I
That
want
is
a meatball
hilarious.
sandwich.
I don't know if I've ever heard that story. That's so good.
Storytime with Xander. There you guys
I
go.
love
So
it. Thank you.
I think we're pushing about an hour now, a little more. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up and show some stuff. I don't have anything new to show. I do have some stuff on the way, so maybe next time.
Check back in
Next episode, I'll have something new to show you guys. But I want to show some Paul Stanley stuff in particular.
Okay.
And I'm calling this segment now the Collector's Corner.
I like that.
The Collector's Corner.
We have a title now.
So I've wanted to call it this for a long time, since the beginning.
Yeah.
So I started doing this. But for some reason in my head, I had it in my head that there was another Kiss podcast that did something like this, and it was called The Collector's Corner, or there was something else in the world called that, and I wanted to be different and original.
Yeah.
But I can't think of
who
where
it
it was, or who it was, or if I'm making it up, so you know what, who cares?
Who cares? Even if they are doing it, they probably don't have a trademark.
And if they are, I don't mean to step on anybody's toes. It's just a segment on our show. I'm calling this
it's just a
The
fun
Collector's Corner. So here we go. What do I have today? Again, it's all Paul Stanley stuff. But I wanted to show this guitar pick. Don't worry, I'll have a close-up of it on the screen for you, because this actually has a small story with it.
Nice.
This is from when we were in Dayton at the sound check.
Yes.
And we were like 10, 15 feet from Paul Stanley.
That was amazing. Closest
and
I've ever been to Paul
flicked
Stanley.
the pick, and this one went like right over my head, right over my shoulder, and I picked it up off the ground and took it home. And it even says, it says Paul Stanley, North America 2022. And so this was the one and only pick I got from 2022, and it's a Paul Stanley pick. And yeah, it was one that he kind of, as it were, flicked to me.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
great.
This is one of those things where I look at it and all I think about is that day in Dayton, that sound check. It was me and you. We met Rob that day.
We did. We spent our whole sound check experience with Rob. It was
great. Rob,
great.
yeah, and he was right next to us during the sound check, and I was seeing Kiss Unmasked, live for the first time.
It was incredible.
No makeup sound check, and so that's what I get from this right here. But it was just crazy being like, that close to Paul again. Of course, he's playing guitar, and
that sound check was so good.
It really was.
I'm so glad we had that experience.
I'm glad we got to do that one. I wish we could have gone again, Jeb and I, in Indianapolis or in Rosemont. But yeah, just to go once in Dayton was sweet. And here is the book that I've been talking about this whole time, the autographed copy of Face the Music that we got at the Indianapolis Kiss Expo. And I'll go ahead and show you guys the autograph here. And what's cool about these books is that I believe they were the only ones on the whole book signing tour to be signed in purple.
Oh, really?
So all the other ones, so all the other ones were just just regular black ink. And here I didn't show you, so nope, there it is, bleeding on the backside. But so you guys see where it did bleed a little bit because he was signing so fast. And,
that's awesome, but that's how you know it's real too. It
is real. Good. It is absolutely real. So there is a Paul Stanley autograph copy of Face the Music. I think it is time to give this another read through. I've read through it twice, but it's been years since I last read through it.
I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you've forgotten and a lot of stuff that you would understand more now.
I bet this would be a really good read.
Yeah, I would like to reread it too, because I even read it at the time.
You loved it.
I loved it. I read the whole thing. I read it.
And this is like right when you were becoming like a Kiss fan.
I read it like right after you did.
Yeah.
And I remember like staying up real late reading the whole thing, so I would really enjoy reading it again as well, because there's a lot of good stuff in it. He's a great writer. It's a very good read.
And I know that I didn't even finish that Desmond Child book in there. I'm a terrible reader. I start a book and never finish it, but. Yeah. I need to get back into reading. I need to finish Desmond Child's book and do a report back here on the show. But also because April is the 10th anniversary since the release.
Okay, yeah.
It'd be nice to do a 10-year anniversary, maybe follow up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That could be something that we could do. But I wanted to bring out my copy of Face the Music because I loved the book. Thought it was great. I'm just going to put that there. And then the last thing I'm going to show, this is super sweet. So if you guys are following the Instagram and Facebook page, you'll see this for Kiss Merch of the Week this week. And that is the Paul Stanley Pumas.
Yes.
The shoes that
These are so sick.
The suede shoes that Paul put out, what year? Maybe 2016? I'm not really sure. What year? 2018 right there. Paul Stanley 2018.
Wow.
No, there's no way. There's no way it's 2018. I wore these to the Kiss Expo in 2016. There's no way. This is 2018. I wore these to the Kiss Expo in 2016 for Kiss Rocks Vegas. Yes?
I don't know if it was that one.
I could have swore it was because it was a little bit cold. It was the double. There was 2 floors. We were outside. I don't know.
2018. It says 2018. 2018 might be right.
That just seems so way too.
Yeah, look it up.
Way too recent. Let me see if I can get a year on that.
But I also 2018 sounds recent to us, but it's also not.
It just sounds too recent for this.
I understand, but
Paul Stanley. Let's see.
Still 6 years ago.
Yes, but I've had these way longer than that. Because I've had these for years. Paul Stanley Pumas. Gosh, it says 2018.
I think it was 2018.
What?
That is insane.
I could have swore I wore these to the 2016 Kiss Expo.
I don't remember you wearing them that long ago. I feel like you wore them to the 2019, like the last expo we went to.
Man, oh man, I'm having a weird thing here. Yeah, September 27th, 2018.
That's wild. It
was the 50th anniversary for Puma.
Yeah, and that was September. Yeah, so it'd have to be 2019 that you wore them. It's crazy. The most recent one we went to.
They say the memory's the first to go, guys. I am getting old.
It's on its way out.
I'm getting old and I'm losing that memory. Oh boy. Well, either way, the shoes are sweet. I guess I could show them.
They're so cool. They're so cool.
I'll just show one shoe here for you guys. So
you do wear them occasionally, but only for very special
I've worn them, I think, twice. Once to the Kiss Expo and then once to one of our dinner theater outings.
Yeah.
I absolutely love wearing them.
Gosh, they're so cool.
They are cool, and I feel like my ultimate self when I wear these.
Yeah,
I do not really care for shoes.
No one can tell you anything
in the same way. No. So I really don't care about, shoes. Shoes to me are just shoes. I know some folks are really adamant about shoes. They buy them, they collect them, and they keep them nice and clean, and they spend gobs of money. This is the most I've ever spent on a pair of shoes, and it was maybe $100, okay?
They're so awesome.
I got them for like maybe $125 or whatever, but which is, for me, astronomical.
For shoes.
For shoes.
Yeah.
And yet, that's pretty standard for some folks who are shoe heads and collect shoes and all that, but no, to me, these are dope. I mean, they're very animalized themed. It looks like they're very Paul Stanley. You can tell. Nice little Paul Stanley badge in the front there. But yeah, no, you're right. I feel like my ultimate self when I wear these. I love them. So there's just a few things that I thought I would show this week. Again, nothing new, but I will have some new stuff coming next week. Or next time on the next episode.
I'm excited.
But next episode...
Do I know about those things?
You do not. Okay. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I can't wait to see.
I can't spoil it because I'll spoil it for them too. Right. So we'll have to just be a surprise for everybody. But the next episode of our podcast is going to be our review of the Ace Frehley show in Brown County, Indiana. So hopefully this show happens. It was postponed last time, so hopefully it's not postponed again. Hopefully it's not canceled. The show actually happens. We get to see Ace. Hopefully he performs a new track or two.
Yes, from the upcoming album,
But so we're going to be seeing Ace January 27th.
If any of you in the Midwest are anywhere close to Nashville, Indiana, or even any sort of driving distance, there are still tickets available.
Get one.
Please get them. We really want this show to happen.
Get a ticket. Come see Ace. Come see us.
Yeah. Come say hi.
Maybe get a chance to see some live, some new Ace music live.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that. Either way, it's going to be a good fun time, night of rock and roll. I cannot wait for that. And then so that'll be on the next episode 83. The next video on our channel next week, next Sunday, is going to be all about the End of the Road tour only. I'm going to be going through... I completely skipped over my End of the Road collection when I did my recent collection full tour video. I skipped right over the End of the Road tour stuff because I want to go through each and every item that I got from the tour separately and do a whole video on that since the tour just kind of happened. I'm still in End of the Road mode.
Yeah.
And I don't want to let the tour go. So I'm going to talk all about my End of the Road merch and the stories that come with it and the concerts that I saw in the next video. So stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe. And then the next week after that, episode 83, will be our review of Ace.
Yes, and go check out that collection video if you haven't seen it yet. It's awesome. He goes in depth to so much of the stuff in this room that you can see and that you can't see.
And
so check that out.
Seriously, thank you to everybody who watched that video, commented on that video, and then watches this show and comments. I mean, all we're here doing is we're wanting to just be positive and talk about Kiss and have fun, celebrate Kiss, the members. all the hard work that they did, what it means to us, and we want everybody to share with us, your thoughts and your feelings and your memories, your experiences. Today, more particularly about Paul Stanley. So if you guys got to meet Paul Stanley, meatball sandwich. If you guys get to meet Paul Stanley,
I'm never gonna forget that.
I'm having a hard time now that I said that because I've never told that story before out loud. So that's the first time I've ever said that story. But anyway, so yeah, if you guys have met Paul Stanley, let us know what your experience was. And then if you got to see maybe a show on his solo tour, I would love to hear some solo tour stories. What a very obscure part in history. I have the Kiss or the Paul solo tour book over there. But anyway, so leave us your guys' stories and your memories about Paul Stanley. And maybe, if you haven't met Paul Stanley, just leave your favorite Paul Stanley song, your favorite lyrics. And then maybe next time we'll check back in and we'll get some of that going. In the meantime, we're going to get out of here. And we'll see you guys next week. And in the next episode 83 of the Kiss Army Things podcast. This is episode 82. And my name is Xander.
My name is Daphne.
And one more time, happy birthday, Paul Stanley.
Happy birthday.